Everyone knows that Philip Bell, a big shot in the Beijing circle, has a little girl who he holds in the palm of his hand. The little girl is pampered and doted on, just like the heroine in a novel, spoiled by everyone. Except me. On the wedding day, the little girl wore a white wedding dress and looked at me provocatively. The one who is not loved is a mistress. So what if you marry Philip? I am still the woman in his heart. Hearing this, the corners of my mouth curled up slightly. I turned my head and slapped Philip in the face. Are you dead? The mistress has come to your door, and you are pretending to be deaf and dumb. 01. On the wedding day, Teresa Bell stood in front of me in a white wedding dress in front of everyone, looking at me provocatively. The one who is not loved is a mistress. So what if you marry Philip? I am still the woman in his heart. The wedding had not started yet, but the backstage was full of people. Among them are many young men from wealthy and prominent families in Beijing. Everyone looked at each other, but no one dared to step forward to dissuade them. It's simple. Everyone knows that Philip, the big boss in the Beijing circle, has a little girl who he holds in the palm of his hand. The little girl is pampered and doted on, just like the heroine in a novel, and is spoiled by everyone in the Bell family. Even though I am Philip's wife now, I am just a decoration in a business marriage. There was no way she could be compared to Philip's sweetheart. There was silence backstage. Philip walked forward surrounded by a group of people, his expression cold. When he saw Teresa, his eyes became as gentle as spring water that had melted the ice. When he turned to me again, his face was still as cold as before. What's wrong with standing here like an idiot? The wedding is about to start. I sneered and looked at Teresa. Do you dare to say what you just said again? Teresa sneered and repeated the words loudly. Before she could finish her words, I swung my arm and slapped her in the face. Bang! I have been doing fitness for many years, and my arms are very strong. With one slap, Teresa's little face turned blue immediately. A drop of blood flowed slowly from her nose, ruining her originally pitiful natural makeup, and even adding a bit of comic color. Teresa seemed to be unable to react. She covered her face and stared at me blankly. I sneered and slapped her twice in the face. The woman that Philip loves the most? It's so funny. The person I hit was the woman that Philip loved the most. When I was about to raise my hand, Philip finally reacted and grabbed my raised hand. Catherine Robinson, have you had enough of this? Teresa is still a child. You really want to hit her just because she said something childish? She's a child, and you're still flirting with her? Are you a pervert? When he finished speaking, I sneered and turned to look at Philip. Philip frowned at me. The next second, I raised my other hand and slapped Philip hard again. I sneered and looked at Philip's swollen face. You probably don't know, I'm known as the Chinese version of Jeju, and my nickname is the God of Palm War. After saying that, I pushed Philip away, pointed at his nose and yelled, I spent 1.5 billion to form a business alliance with you, and you write canary literature for me? If you want to sleep with a young girl, just say so. Stop giving me some nurturing literature. That's fucking disgusting. After saying that, I threw the bouquet at Philip's face. No one can let the wedding go on until this mess is dealt with cleanly today. Do you think I want to marry you? The people chasing me line up from here to France. How can you be so picky? If your old man hadn't begged me and almost knelt down before me, do you think you would have had a chance to marry me? Fuck you. After saying that, I tore off the white veil on my head and walked out of the backstage in a swagger. 02. My mother was waiting in the dressing room. When she saw me coming, she smiled and gave me a thumbs up. As expected of my daughter, so domineering. I sneered, sat down on the sofa and crossed my legs. I have been in the business world for many years, and I am not a fool. The Bells had Teresa humiliate me in public, but it was just a test of my obedience. The Bell family is a wealthy and prestigious family in the capital, and their status is very high. However, in recent years, due to its inability to keep up with the trend of the times, the Bell Group has declined, and its revenue has been weak. In order to raise funds, they had to enter into a business marriage. And I, a woman with money but no background, am the best choice. They covet my dowry worth more than 1 billion, but they are unwilling to humble themselves and beg me. So they just pretended to be whores and tried to poo me. using his noble status to suppress me. This made me, a nouveau riche, feel inferior to others, and finally I had to hold the dowry in my hands and beg them to use it. Thinking of this, I sneered. It's so funny. This is such a bold act. Even the dog shook his head when he heard it. They had a good plan, but they didn't expect that I was not a soft persimmon that could be bullied by anyone. I am a piece of explosive carbon. I was raised by my mother since I was a child, and she got on the fast track at the beginning of reform and opening up. Back then, he relied on himself and a few partners to start his business in a steel factory. Later, he invested in the internet and managed to accumulate a huge fortune. I was better than my teacher and made a name for myself abroad at a young age. Many well-known clothing brands on the market today are my subsidiaries. The business world is like a battlefield. Anyone who can survive in it is no ordinary person. My mother and I are both great quarrelers. If it wasn't for the desire to carve out a niche in the vast domestic market, I would never have married Philip. I despise Philip from the bottom of my heart. The mother's assistant was undercover at the scene. The assistant said that the old lady from the Bell family had arrived, and it was too early to make any noise, so they asked us to take a break from putting on makeup. There were melon seeds and snacks in the dressing room, so my mother and I simply sat on the sofa. He was eating melon seeds while cursing Philip. In this society, if a woman is a little bit weak, she will be eaten up by men. My mother and I have been in the business world for many years, so we naturally understand this truth. Therefore, we all have hot tempers, and our voices are often very loud. We all knew that there was someone from the Bell family eavesdropping at the dressing room door, so we just cursed at the top of our lungs. My mother came from the market, so she was very good at scolding people. He started swearing in all kinds of ways, even digging up the ancestors of the Bell family and cursing them all. I fanned the flames and kept cursing for half an hour before I heard the person outside the door couldn't stand it anymore and started throwing things and leaving. The mother drank her tea leisurely and said sarcastically, "I didn't expect that I couldn't handle this. If you knew you couldn't handle it, you shouldn't have brought that little bitch to the wedding. Isn't that just asking for trouble?" I smiled and turned the ring on my finger. I'm just a bitch. I heard that all the Bell family members are slaves. The more you scold me, the more obedient I become. My mother agreed with my comment and nodded. 03. Another half an hour passed and still no one came. I know the Bell family is embarrassed. They are unwilling to give up their noble stature and seek help from a lowly nouveau riche. The message sounded and I picked up the phone. It was the old lady from the Bell family who sent me the message, asking me to forgive Philip and come to the wedding for her sake. I sneered immediately. Your face is a piece of shit. You don't want to apologize to me, right? Then let's fight till the end. I checked the time and called Philip without hesitation. The call was connected, and I heard from the other end that Philip was on loudspeaker. Before Philip could say anything, I opened my mouth. "Philip, I'll give you 5 minutes, you big bitch. Bring your little bitch to come to my house and apologize. If you don't come, I remember that you recently found a financial tycoon to help you manage your assets. Don't forget, my base is overseas, and the fund industry is still acceptable. From now on, if you dare to be late, I will be your rival tonight. You go short and I go long, you go long and I go short. Anyway, I have plenty of money, so I'm not afraid of losing it. If you're 1 minute late, I'll make you lose 10 million. I mean what I say." After saying that, I ignored the call from the other end and hung up the phone. 3 minutes later, hurried footsteps were heard outside the dressing room, and the door was suddenly opened. It was Philip and Teresa. I sat on the sofa with my legs crossed and watched Philip reluctantly walk forward. After he lowered his head and surrendered, I looked at Teresa. The little girl's face was blue and red, as if she had run a dying factory. I gave a fake smile. "Teresa, I know you're just a child, and I can understand your carelessness. It's okay. I'll teach you slowly when I enter the Bell family." After that, I took out a wad of money from my handbag. "You are Philip's child, so I am naturally your stepmother. Call me Mom and I'll give you money to change your name." After saying that, Teresa suddenly raised her head and looked at Philip with tears on her face. I looked at Teresa with a big smile. After a while, Teresa gritted her teeth, her eyes full of hatred, but she had to lower her head. Mother. I smiled, raised my hand, and threw a wad of money in her face. Good girl. What my mother likes most is a girl who has self-respect and self-love. Learn more from your mother in the future. Don't let your mind be filled with thoughts of men. That is sexual brain disease, or in other words, a mental illness. It needs to be treated. After saying that, I stood up gracefully, brushed off the non-existent dust on my body, and turned to Philip with a smile. Why are you standing there when you on? Let's go. 04. The wedding was a complete success, and I, Catherine, became an instant hit among the upper class in Beijing. She slapped her adopted daughter and her husband at the wedding, and they are from a wealthy family. What an achievement. Everyone says I'm a great guy. My husband's family originally wanted to intimidate me in front of everyone, who knew that I would kill them back and stuff the stinky dog shit they threw out back into the mouths of Belle's own people. I don't care what other people say. I only know that I have become the eldest lady of the Belle family. On the wedding night, Philip came to the bedroom, his face as black as the bottom of a pot. Catherine, I'm telling you, you may have my body now, but you will never have my heart. I sneered and kicked him off the bed. Who cares about your white pig-like body? Even a pig-like person like me would feel disgusted if I looked at you for one more second. Roll. The next day, I woke up refreshed, and the first thing I did was to call together the servants of the mansion. The butler stood in the middle, with his hands hanging down. I looked him up and down, then suddenly smiled. Who pays your salary now? The butler said respectfully. It's you, madam. I nodded. It seems that he is quite sensible. After he finished speaking, I picked up the tea bowl and flicked the tea foam off it. Since you know who feeds you, then don't betray them. Be careful, I'll fire you guys someday. And see if those old guys will still want you. After saying that, I looked up and saw that several servants shrank back and lowered their heads even lower. When the servants had left, I looked up and saw Philip standing on the second floor, frowning at me. I put the tea bowl on the table and said slowly, I have to say, I hate looking up to others. After hearing what I said, Philip walked down the stairs with dark circles under his eyes. The young master has never slept on the floor before. It's okay. He will get used to it after sleeping on it often. Philip's voice was cold and hard. Catherine, why do you have to kill them all? I raised my eyebrows. What do you mean by ruthlessly killing them all? This is called employee lecture. They listen to me and fulfill their responsibilities as employees, so of course I won't be stingy. Rewards and punishments are clear. This is the basic logic of doing business. You've been in charge of the Belle family for so long, haven't you learned yet? Seeing my sarcastic look, Philip took a deep breath and changed the subject. When will you give me the 1.5 billion? I was amused and asked him, why should I give you my dowry? You asked me for a dowry after you gave me the betrothal gift? What do you want my dowry for? Seeing me asking 3 questions in a row, Philip clenched his hands and whispered, the Belle family is having a bit of a hard time lately and is short of funds. We need your dowry as an investment. As for the betrothal gift, we are sorry for you. I laughed out loud on the spot. Just an ambiguous, I'm sorry. And you want 1.5 billion from me? Dream. I sat on the sofa with my legs crossed and said with a smile, you want my dowry? Sure. But every penny you invest, every penny you inject into the Belle family, must pass through the hands of my people. Every business move you make must be reviewed by my assistant in advance. After listening to me, Philip's anger, which had been suppressed for so long, finally erupted. Catherine, don't go too far. I've never seen a woman as mean as you. Seeing him get angry, I threw the tea bowl to the ground. Bang! I stared at Philip. Philip, you are such a hypocrite. When your Belle family is so stingy and doesn't let me use their resources and connections, you can't do anything with your 3 sticks. Now it's my turn and you say I'm mean? I'm telling you, if you want to cooperate in a business marriage and exchange resources, I have no problem with that. But if you want to get my hands on me for free, I don't know how many lives you have left before you dare to do that. After saying that, I stood up and looked down at him. I know you like gentle things, but your love is no different from dog shit to me. Think carefully about your own business value. Show your sincerity, and then come to me for cooperation. After saying that, I left Philip behind, picked up the bag handed to me by the housekeeper, and walked out the door. 05. I am not some pampered rich lady. I have my own business, and don't have time to be a vase in the Bell family. I have been working very hard on Robinson's branch in Beijing recently. My original intention of marrying into the Bell family was to expand my network. Now that my goal has been achieved, I am naturally busy developing my career. After my warning to Philip in the morning, my work in Beijing went much more smoothly. Seeing Bell's sincerity, I was not stingy either. With a wave of his hand, he invested a sum of money in Bell. After all, I am now a shareholder of Bell, so we share the same fate. But investment also has prerequisites. To prevent the Bell family from doing anything with my money, I sent a contract specifically to Philip. If Bell fails to reach the profit point I set within 3 months, I will not follow up with my subsequent investment. I heard from the assistant that Philip got very angry in the office after getting the contract. But what does it matter? Anyway, he finally agreed to my request. When the assistant handed me the contract, he looked worried. Catherine, are we going too far by pushing the envelope like this? I flicked the contract with satisfaction and said with a smile, Wendy, you are still young. Don't you know that you have to be so ruthless when dealing with Bell's people? They look down on me, my background, and even more so my gender. In today's society, the requirements for women are too harsh. Women must be submissive and must be subordinate to others. As soon as they show characteristics that are male, people will immediately say that they are restless and unmarriageable. Including what I am doing now, it is just the most normal business behavior. But even so, Philip felt that I was being too pushy and not a good woman. Fuck that nice woman. Under my high-pressure policy, the Bell Group's ship finally started to move slowly. Philip was afraid that I would not invest in Bell's, so he worked very hard to innovate at Bell's. There are changes in senior personnel and internal turmoil. Every night, Philip comes back late at night. 06. When the construction of my branch in Beijing was completed, I remembered that I had a goddaughter like Teresa. The housekeeper told me that Teresa's birthday was coming up. According to his previous habit, Philip would hold a grand banquet in his mansion. I followed my custom and spent a little extra money to buy Teresa a set of jewelry. Looking at Teresa pretending to be aloof, her eyes could not hide the ecstasy. The corners of my mouth curled up slightly. Let Teresa be proud of herself. She won't be staying at the Bell House for many more days anyway. At the banquet, I wore a crimson hip-hugging dress and a ruby necklace that my mother had just brought from the auction. The main stone is deep red like blood, looking dangerous and beautiful. On the other hand, Teresa was wearing a lotus-pink cheongsam with her long curly hair hanging down in front of her chest. She looks pitiful without any makeup. Philip looked at Teresa tenderly, but when his eyes turned to me, he frowned. I didn't care, and put on my lipstick in front of the mirror. At the banquet, I walked out holding Philip's arm. Everyone looked at each other, but no one spoke. I know that originally Philip and Teresa appeared together. Now that I have a more outgoing personality, they are naturally not used to it. But then they changed their mind about me. The party started, and I left Philip behind, socializing with wine in my hand. The businessmen who used to look down on me now all smiled and toasted me. After all, I am now known as Mrs. Xie, so it is not easy for them to offend me. I haven't been in the business world all these years in vain. After several social events, that group of high-ranking officials also realized that I was quite capable. They all became serious and talked to me. After 3 rounds of drinks, I made an excuse to go to the bathroom and fix my hair in front of the mirror. Suddenly, I heard the voices of several little girls. The little girl in the pink skirt said to her companion, I didn't expect that stepmother Teresa is so powerful. She looks like someone who is not someone you can mess with. Another little girl sneered, so what if she's not easy to deal with? Our family backgrounds are not such that we can't please her. Teresa's enemies are our enemies. Don't be nice to her. After saying that, I sneered and just found it funny. A few little brats who are still wet behind the ears, you still want to isolate me? It's true that you are a wealthy family in Beijing, but it's not your turn to speak now. By the time it is your turn to speak, I will have already flourished in the capital. No matter who you are, you must cooperate with me. I was too lazy to listen to their hair-raising speeches, so I fixed my hair and went back. When I returned to the party, Teresa was already standing next to Philip. Philip looked at Teresa tenderly. Today is our Teresa's 18th birthday. I wish our Teresa peace and happiness every day. After saying this, he picked up the crown that was on the cushion and placed it on Teresa's head. That was an antique that Philip bought from an auction and was priceless. A girl standing in the crowd couldn't help but talk to her companions. It seems that the Bell family still values Teresa very much. Teresa looked up and saw me, her gentle face full of provocation. I turned a blind eye to it. Teresa smiled harmlessly. Mom, what are you going to give me? With Philip's gift as an example, if I don't give something valuable, people will talk about me as a nouveau riche and petty. The only thing more valuable than antiques is shares. But a strange arc appeared on the corner of my mouth, and I clapped my hands with a smile. The butler brought over an exquisite tray. I pulled off the red cloth. It's a simple letter. Teresa opened it with disdain, but after seeing the contents, her eyes widened in surprise, and she looked at me in disbelief. I looked at her and smiled, speaking softly. Mom knows that you are a good student, have high standards, and have high expectations for school. So Mom asked Professor Ramirez to write a letter of recommendation for you, recommending you to the law school of the University of Munich. When you turn 18, Mom wishes you a bright future and a wonderful life. After saying that, Teresa's eyes changed completely when she looked at me. She was born into a wealthy family and was influenced by it since she was a child. Although Philip is important to her, the offer is more important now. What's more, it was Professor Ramirez's personal recommendation letter. This was something Philip couldn't ask for even if he visited him in person. At this time, Teresa finally called me Mom with true feelings. The smile on my face became more meaningful. You can go and study at the law school of the University of Munich in Germany, and you will be silent all the time. After all, the 3 years of undergraduate study in Germany will be the most meaningful 7 years of your life. When you graduate after all the hard work and come back, I guarantee that you will be in a clear mind and will not have any interest in Philip. After all, even though I am such a smart person, I still lost a lot of skin there to avoid delaying the completion of the exam. If someone like Teresa, who is a little smart but has a high opinion of herself, goes in, she is guaranteed to die a miserable death. Teresa, this silly kid, kept thanking me. I put on a loving motherly look and accepted the gift with a smile. The banquet hall was filled with a happy atmosphere, except for Philip and the Bell family, who had stiff faces. I glanced at them but said nothing. I know what they are thinking. They delayed finding a school for Teresa because they wanted to keep Teresa in the country. After all, keeping Teresa in the country to oppose me would attract my attention and allow me to have a fight with her in the Bell family's inner house. When the time comes, they can use my dowry to conduct business at Bell's without worrying about me noticing. But who am I? How could I possibly indulge in love? A letter of recommendation that was irresistible just shut up the Bell family and got rid of the little trouble Teresa. 07. After Teresa received the recommendation letter, she started learning the language. She didn't have much time left, and German was not as easy as she had imagined. Even though she had a basic knowledge of German, she still found it difficult to learn in depth, not to mention having to take other subjects into consideration. I simply spent a lot of money to hire several high-end tutors for her, and went to the Bell family's mansion every day to give her lessons. Philip watched from the side, but couldn't find any fault. He was about to ask Teresa to come out and oppose me, but I stopped him with a smile. Hubby, Teresa is at a critical moment right now. Since you love her, don't delay her at this time. Although I am not well educated, I know that everything is inferior except for reading. Isn't it a good thing that Teresa likes this? After saying that, I stared at Philip with curved eyebrows and eyes, and I could see that Philip was feeling a little guilty, especially the phrase "no culture." It made him very angry. Originally he looked down on me, and didn't even bother to learn about my information. It wasn't until I showed him Ramirez's letter of recommendation at Teresa's birthday party that he became alert. Graduated from the Faculty of Law of the University of Munich with a double degree in law and finance. During my master's degree, I accidentally met the founder of a luxury brand. Find the entrepreneurial direction, drop out of school, and create your own brand. He is only 28 years old and has a huge fortune, but he keeps a low profile and entered the domestic market this year. However, he, who claimed to be a big shot in the Beijing circle, only got a degree abroad with the help of his family. As soon as he returned to China, he started to do nothing to support his little girl. How can he compare with me? After knowing my background, Philip's self-esteem was severely damaged, and he has been avoiding me for the past few days. But I was too lazy to pay attention to him, and started to busy myself with my own career. 08. On Friday night, I met with several suppliers for dinner at the club. The club has a nice environment, with winding streams and flowing wine cups, and a skilled musician singing the Jiangnan tunes melodiously. After several rounds of negotiations with the suppliers, I finally got what I wanted at the lowest price that was within their affordability. The middle-aged man with a big belly smiled bitterly. "Catherine, it's so hard to deal with you." I smiled brightly and held the cup with him. "Thank you, Craig. Same here." After 3 rounds of drinks, I escaped under the pretext of going to the bathroom to take a breath. The view on the rooftop was nice. Just as I was about to take out my lighter, I heard a familiar voice. It's the old lady from Philip and Belle's family. I turned and hid in the curtain beside me and listened to their conversation. The old lady's usual kind tone changed. Her voice was low and cold. "Why don't you do anything to Catherine? Don't tell me you can't even handle a woman." Philip's voice was extremely irritable. "It's not that I don't want to do it. It's that Catherine is too vigilant. She's not a pushover. There's no way we can get those 1.5 billion directly." The old lady sneered. "She's just a woman. How capable can she be? Your sister-in-law was a tough guy at first, but she ended up throwing out all her dowry." The rooftop suddenly became quiet. The old lady said slowly, "Since you don't want to give a dowry, that's fine. If we turn her into a vegetable, all her money will belong to us, right? Just like what we did to your sister-in-law. Don't tell me you can't even do something like this." Hearing him say this, I paused and a hint of sarcasm flashed in my eyes. It seems that the Bell family is not a good family. After the mother and son left, I was about to go out when I heard footsteps. The next second, a gentle voice sounded. "Catherine, did you hear everything I just said?" I pulled the curtain aside and looked up, and saw a tall man standing in front of me. A gentleman in a white shirt with dark patterns, a gray sweater, and metal-framed glasses. He is a professional manager of the Bell Group, and the illegitimate son of the Bell family, Travis Bell. This illegitimate child, who grew up in the slums before the age of 15, and entered a wealthy family to make a living after the age of 15, is surprisingly tough. After struggling in the Bell family for 3 years, he went to study in the United States at the age of 18. After returning from his studies, he still chose to be loyal to the Bell family. I curled my hair and looked up at him lazily. Why did Travis go to all that trouble to let me hear this? Travis chuckled and confessed his ambition without beating around the bush. "I want the whole Bell family. Cooperate with me. After the deal is done, I will give you 6% of Bell's shares, and I will return the 1.5 billion with interest." I looked him up and down, then shook his hand decisively. "Make a deal." 09. It was so easy to work with Travis for a simple reason. Travis's background accounts for most of the reason. The foolish and lecherous old man of the Bell family, the strong and vicious old lady of the Bell family, and Travis' mother, who was raped and robbed. Plus the illegitimate son Travis. What's more, Philip has long been dissatisfied with Travis' position as a professional manager. If the board of directors hadn't tried to stop him, Philip would have fired Travis long ago. At this point, even if Travis is not interested in competing with others, he has to fight for it. What's more, he is an ambitious man. I agreed to Travis's request for cooperation, but I didn't act rashly. I still go to get off work and come home every day as usual. She would act like a mother, and show concern for Teresa, who was exhausted from studying, and then humiliate Philip with harsh words. People like Philip are weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. Under my high-pressure policy, he doesn't even dare to fart. Until I built up the business of the Beijing branch and started to take a large sum of money from Bell as an investor. The old lady of the Bell family finally couldn't wait any longer. After I divided the money and left, the old lady of the Bell family slammed the table. In front of a large group of shareholders, she pointed at Philip's nose and yelled, "How could I raise a piece of trash like you?" After saying that, the old lady slammed the door and walked out with a dark face. I laughed out loud as Travis recounted it all to me with a smile. After I finished laughing, Travis picked up the coffee cup on the table and said, "But Catherine, be careful. Even the old lady is angry, so she won't be long before she attacks you." I sneered. The Bell family is in such a miserable state because of this old man, who has a hypocritical heart and a righteous mouth. So what if I take 40% of the profits? If it weren't for my investment, they wouldn't have gotten a penny now. After saying that, Travis nodded. The Bell family is used to taking advantage, that's it. Be careful now. There are my people around the old lady. If she attacks you, I will warn you. After the negotiation, we talked a little more about cooperation, and then went our separate ways. If you want to make someone leave this world in a reasonable way, the method is very simple. Poisoning, car accident. There are two types of poisoning: chronic poison or direct poisoning. Since returning to China, I have frequently appeared in the public eye, so it is too obvious that they wanted to kill themselves with poison. Then it's just a chronic poison. But in the current situation, I am like a sponge that absorbs water crazily, expanding my territory every moment. Every day I delay will erode Bell's status in the capital. Chronic poison takes too long to take effect. I would probably be dead by the time I show any symptoms. In comparison, a car accident was the most cost-effective way to kill me. Travis said that the old witch in the Bell family is best at covering up crimes by using car accidents. His mother lost her life in a car accident planned by the old lady. To this day, although the old lady is still strong, she is no longer the same as before. Travis assured me that he would come and inform me as soon as he received the news. After all, he and I are now in the same boat. 10. The day for the plan to be implemented is approaching soon. In order to gild Teresa's reputation, Philip built an art gallery for her and exhibited her oil paintings in it. And this museum has just been completed. As the owner of the art museum, Philip naturally had to attend the unveiling ceremony. I have always disliked Philip and don't like riding in the same car with him, and this time was no exception. Teresa has to review, so only Philip and I can go. Just before leaving, my secretary gave me an urgent call. He said that the original supplier suddenly raised the price and asked me to go to the company to negotiate immediately, as there was no time to lose. After I answered the phone, I immediately informed Philip and asked him to leave first. Although Philip had some complaints about this, he dared not say anything due to my power and could only take the initiative. The car he often used was found to have a minor problem with the system half an hour ago. Philip thought it was a hint from his mother, so he obediently changed to the car I usually took. 5 minutes after Philip left, I randomly picked a car from the garage and went to the company. It is true that there are problems with the supplier, but I am not a fool. It is very easy to solve things that have been planned in advance. An hour later, I had dealt with the issue of supplier chargeback. As soon as I left the meeting room, I received a call from the police. The person on the phone said that my husband Philip had been in a serious car accident and his brain was spilled, and asked me to go to the hospital immediately. I immediately said that I would rush to the hospital as soon as possible and asked the doctor to do his best to treat me, no matter the cost. When I arrived at the hospital, old Lady Bell was already waiting at the door of the ward. When she saw me coming, the hatred in her eyes almost became real. "Catherine, you bitch. Why did you hurt my son?" As she spoke, she threw herself on me and beat me. "I only have this one son. Why are you trying to harm him?" My assistant Wendy was very strong. She pushed her away and stared at her with a cold face. "Old lady, we understand your anxiety when your son got into trouble, But please don't throw dirty water on him. Our Catherine just came back from work. How could she have had time to murder your son? However, why did the driver have to hit the car that Catherine usually drives when the road is so wide? I trained Wendy to look fierce and piercing with her sharp eyes. The Bell family members all avoided her gaze guiltily. Travis, who was standing aside, stopped the old lady. Mother, before the police have finished their investigation, you should check on my brother. It would have been better if she didn't say it. After hearing what Travis said, Philip's grandmother looked at him viciously. After a while, she slapped Travis in the face. It was quiet all around. Travis lowered his head without saying a word and gently touched the side of his face with his slender fingers. Grandma Philip sneered. Your brother is in trouble now. And you are the one who is most proud, right? I'm telling you, if anything happens to Wenyuan, none of you will have a good life. After saying this, she shook off the servant who was supporting her and strode away. Travis and I stood at the door of the operating room, looking at each other in silence. The lights in the hospital corridor were dim, but I saw a flame-like light in Travis' eyes. This man is not as docile and gullible as he appears. Philip originally had an older brother, but 3 years ago, he was shot dead at the entrance of a casino while gambling in the United States. Philip's grandmother was furious and hired the most professional team of lawyers to sue the casino owner, determined to find the truth about her son's death. But the casino owner has the backing of the local mafia. Moreover, the boss's younger brother is a famous local lawyer. The two forces confronted each other, but in the end, the matter ended in failure because it happened in a foreign country. But if you look deeper, you will find out. The lawyer's homosexual lover was a good classmate of Travis when he was studying in the United States. Love cannot inspire people, but hate can burst out with powerful force. Travis was a man who grew up surrounded by hatred. It's like a poisonous snake that lies dormant for many years and finally kills you with one blow when you are not paying attention. Such a person cannot be easily provoked. 11. Doctors are not gods. Of course, a person whose brains have been knocked out cannot survive. After more than 10 hours of resuscitation, Philip was pronounced dead by the doctor. When Philip's grandmother heard the news, she almost fainted. But it was just almost. Because the police came. The police came to arrest the suspect with the confession of the truck driver who caused the accident. That truck driver is no fool. Philip's grandmother promised that if she killed me, she would pay for the high cost of treating the genetic disease for his daughter and mother. But now he screwed up. The person he killed was Philip's grandmother's beloved and only son. No one will protect him now. In order to get a lighter sentence, he quickly confessed everything. Based on the confession, the police immediately arrested Philip's grandmother. Philip's grandmother also wanted to reveal her identity and avoid jail time. Who knew that the two policemen were just rookies and were not afraid of her at all. Only then did she feel scared. The old voice mixed with fear echoed throughout the hospital. Travis and I sat in the police station, took our statements, and were released. After all this trouble, I'm a little tired. But Travis was still energetic. He finished the statement first and changed his clothes from somewhere. He was dressed in a suit and had a faint scent of perfume. I turned my head and looked over. He pushed the metal-framed glasses on his nose and smiled elegantly. Catherine, go back and rest. When you wake up, I will return all the shares and 1.5 billion to you. Looking at his expression, I knew that after lying dormant for many years, he was finally going to take back what belonged to him. I don't care about the Bell family's mess. The Bell family is a mixed bag, with countless sons and nephews. Trying to snatch something from such a huge group is no less than snatching meat from a group of hungry wolves. I have only been in the Bell family for more than half a year, and the Bell family is like a swamp. I will not act rashly without being fully prepared. What's more, I have a lot of things to do in the branch office in Beijing. And Fairy, this is not the best time to seize power. I would be content if you could give me the shares and 1.5 billion that the marriage law entitles me to. The luxury car drove to the Bell mansion. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw Teresa waiting at the door with a pale face. When she saw me get off the car, she opened her mouth, but stopped herself from saying anything. I walked up to her and patted her shoulder. Philip is dead. Teresa nodded with difficulty, then looked up at me, completely losing her previous arrogance. I exhaled softly. You still have to go to school. The requirements of the law school of the University of Munich are extremely strict. Your current level is still far from enough. Study hard. After saying that, I lowered my head and looked into Teresa's eyes. As for the rest, Philip didn't give you anything including equity, trust, real estate, etc. And legally you two are not in an adoptive relationship. Philip has no guardianship over you, and you can't get a penny from him. After hearing what I said, Teresa's lips turned pale and she looked shaky. Originally, Philip supported Teresa just to satisfy her literary addiction, and he didn't care about Teresa's future. After all, she will have to depend on him in the future, and giving her too many assets would be bad for Philip. But looking at Teresa's expression, I sighed and looked back at the lawyer waiting behind me. The female lawyer walked up, took Teresa's hand, and handed her an agreement. The lawyer explained softly, "As your stepmother, Catherine will not leave you alone. This agreement stipulates that as long as you promise not to participate in Belle's internal struggles, and not to act as Philip's adopted daughter in Belle's activities, you will have the right to obtain the following assets. This includes all your expenses for studying in Germany, 50 million in cash, and 2 ready-made houses in Beijing. You can take away all the luxury goods and jewelry that Philip bought for you." Teresa froze there, then looked up at me. There was a dull expression on my face. It's worth spending some money to buy Teresa, and never go to Belle's again. Teresa does not pose a threat now, but it will be troublesome if someone with ulterior motives uses Teresa's name to work for Belle in the future. But if Teresa is still ambitious and refuses to sign the agreement, I have 10,000 ways to make Teresa leave Belle completely. After a while, Teresa held my hand tightly and said anxiously, "I do. I'm willing to sign. Give me the agreement and I'll sign it right away." Hearing her words, I smiled with satisfaction. The jewelry Philip bought her was worth more than 50 million. Add to that the cash and property I gave her, and as long as she behaves herself, it will be enough for her to live a life of luxury in Beijing. 12. At the beginning of the school year, after seeing Teresa off, I began to deal with the shares and assets I inherited from Philip. Although this business marriage did not last long, from a business perspective, I did gain a lot. Although Travis holds the majority of the shares, my holdings are enough for me to be on the board of directors. The day I went to Belle's, I met Travis. He already looked very elegant, and he greeted me with a smile and invited me to have a cup of coffee. I agreed. In the coffee shop downstairs from the company, Travis came to me with 2 cups of freshly made coffee. I took the coffee and said with a smile, "I thought you would take me to a fancier place." Travis smiled and shook his head, sitting in his seat and looking out the window. The sunlight shines through the French windows onto his face. It is clearly a bright arc, but I can see a hint of sadness in it. After a while, Travis said in a daze, "When I was a kid, I used to pass by here on my way to school and look through the windows at the white-collar workers working inside. At the time, I was thinking that I would work here in the future and earn money to support my mother. Later, I became the owner of this place, but my mother was gone." Hearing him say this, I fell silent. Some time ago, Travis dug up his mother's case and asked the court to retrial the case. He said his mother did not die accidentally, but was killed by Philip's grandmother. The chain of evidence he produced was complete, and the facts were solid. Philip's grandmother was convicted of intentional homicide and other crimes. She will be punished for multiple crimes at the worst possible time, the death penalty, and not much better at the best. Imprisonment is inevitable. The old lady schemed all her life, but in the end all her property fell into the hands of her illegitimate son. I don't know what she would think. When Travis came back to his senses, he saw me and smiled apologetically. Catherine laughed at me. I waved my hand and he continued, "Catherine has helped me so much this time. If you need anything in the capital, feel free to come to me." The internal struggle within Belle has not eased because of this. But fortunately I have accumulated some connections when I was a professional manager, so I can barely cope with it. Let's just say goodbye now. After saying that, he stood up and said goodbye to me. After he left, I looked out the window. The sun is shining brightly in early autumn in Beijing. The trees are lush and green, and everything seems to be thriving. I have been in Beijing for more than half a year. I developed a new company and joined the Bell's board of directors. My future has just begun.